We're going. All right, people. All right, folks. We're in. We are in right here on a Sunday. The recap right here. The BAMA Elite Touchdown Alabama Magazine, the hottest podcast you're going to find right here. The A-team in the building. We got my man Justin Smith, the lead scouting and recruiting analyst for TDA. Patrick Dow, breaking news reporter for Touchdown Alabama Magazine. I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith. And after the Iron Bowl where Bama got the 49-27 win, getting that 10th victory of the season, Coach Saban trying to campaign for his team to get into that college football playoff, and different guys like Bryce Young and Will Anderson trying to campaign for that playoff as well. But first and foremost, people, you got to check out that College Podcast Network and audio stream for the best college football coverage in the South. Check it out right there. College Football Podcast Network and audio stream for all the coverage. Also, check out our guys at Prize Picks, outstanding sponsor right there. They got the flavor for what you need in terms of fantasy sports, whether you like college ball, college basketball, NFL, MLB, NBA, boxing, esports, whatever you crave, they got you. Prize Picks. You use the code BAMA100 if you're doing this from the Alabama football perspective, where it's you against the projections. You use that code BAMA100. They got you covered right there in terms of Prize Picks. But getting this thing started up, Pat, you and I got a chance to watch the Iron Bowl up there in person, final game of the regular season. Pat, how you feeling today?
I'm doing great, Stephen. Hope everyone out there had a good holiday as well. And Yeah, we got to see Alabama finish strong over the weekend with that big win over Auburn, and there was actually some good, some bad. Defense could have played a little bit better, in my opinion. But I mean, that was one of the better offensive performances I've seen in quite a while for Alabama, especially from the way they started the game. We've kind of gotten used to Alabama kind of lagging behind on the offensive side of the football, but they came out of the gates really firing. So, there was some really, really encouraging things to see on the offensive side of the ball.
For the first time, Pat, I felt like the Alabama fan base looked at Bill O'Brien and said, finally, Bill O'Brien, finally. It may be a little too late, but finally, O'Brien, this is what we're waiting for from you. Some creativity, getting all the receivers involved, getting all the playmakers involved, 9 points on the scoreboard. So, Bama Nation pleased with O'Brien in this matchup, not necessarily Pete Golding, but Justin, man, I mean, how are you feeling on your end and the recruits that were there at Denny? I know you got a chance to talk to quite a few of them. How did they enjoy the Iron Bowl?
But Iron Bowl is always a good game. I think, like they were telling me, Bryant-Denny Stadium isn't the most intimidating environment week to week because Alabama has become so good. And I think some of the fans have, I guess, come a little bit spoiled. But the Iron Bowl is one of the games where the crowd is really rocking and watching the game. I'm pretty sure the viewers were able to see that. You can hear the crowd in Bryant-Denny Stadium over the TV. So the environment that was created by the fans was really impactful in that game. And just taking a look at that matchup, similar to what Pat said. Yeah, Alabama struggled in some areas, the same struggles that we've seen them struggle with throughout the season in terms of stopping the run game, but they seem to be getting better in some particular ways. I think the running back seem to be running with a little bit more purpose. So Jameer Gibbs even seemed to be running a little bit stronger than he has in the past. So yeah, it was a good weekend. I hope everybody had a great holiday weekend as well.
Absolutely. So, guys, our first thought here coming from my man Tobias to the chat line here. He writes in, and he's referring this to me as I'm trying to get to show up here on screen. But Tobias was saying, Stephen, I remember on Friday I asked you about, is it okay for us to dream, for us being the Bama fans to dream? And he said, see, what around the country, there's a chance. Tobias speaking in terms of the chaos, what happened. LSU lost to Texas A&M. We saw Michigan pummel Ohio State. We watched South Carolina do it again on Clemson. So 3 teams being Clemson, Ohio State, and LSU all fail over the weekend. Notre Dame did not continue the chaos as USC beat the Trojans. But you look at this, you had some chaos over the weekend. This upcoming week, you got conference championship week. You got USC in the Pac-12 title game. You got TCU competing for a Big 12 championship. You look at, does Ohio State lose again? Probably not. But, I mean, Pat, after the chaos that we did see just over the weekend, could some more ensue in conference championship week in terms of Alabama? Still on the outside looking in for the playoff. Right now, the AP poll has it at number 6 or number 5, excuse me. We're at number 6. But do you see a scenario where, Alabama can have even more chaos ensue here, Pat?
I mean, sure. I mean, if there's games to play, there's always going to be chances for chaos to happen. And look, if this week proved anything, especially with Clemson and Oregon and so many and LSU going down ahead of Alabama, there's the path is kind of open a little bit. And even though Ohio State and Michigan, 2 teams ranked, I think, 2nd and 3rd in the college football playoff rankings, I think the way that Ohio State lost that game at home and really kind of got hammered and blown out by Michigan, that kind of creaked the door open even more for Alabama because it created even more of a conversation. Because when you compare Alabama's 2 losses, you can prop up how both those losses were by a total of 4 points, and they were both on the road against LSU and against Tennessee, which were 2 teams that were ranked inside the top 10 at one point, and Tennessee at one point being I believe at one point they were the number 1 ranked team. So, there's arguments to be made, and I think it's really going to come down to this week's college football playoff rankings. Where do they put Alabama? Because if they're in at number 5, then I think they actually have a pretty strong chance of sneaking into this playoff. But we're just gonna have to see how they feel Ohio State compares to them, especially after how they ended this week with that blowout loss to Michigan.
I mean, it's just kind of crazy how you're literally at the mercy of the committee, and you never know at times. We can look at Ohio State losing by 20 plus at home in the horseshoe to Michigan. Alabama, you are a made field goal and a 2-point conversion stop away from being undefeated and in the top 4 of the college football playoff. So the committee look at it. How do they weigh certain things? And the latest rankings will come out on Tuesday. So everybody will definitely be glued to the TV screen to watch that. But let's get into this Iowa matchup of the weekend. Auburn came in with a lot of intensity, a lot of energy under Cardinal Cadillac Williams, who has done a fine job as the interim coach for Tigers. But Justin, this week, we saw a bit more creativity from Bill O'Brien. We saw him get the playmakers involved more. Isaiah Bond, Kendrick Law, both freshmen had some good moments out there. Jermaine Burton had a good moment out there, had a big catch there. I think he led the team in receiving yards. Ja'Cory Brooks made some plays out there. So guys got more involved. Justin, what did you take away offensively, from the Iron Bowl, where Bill O'Brien finally started to give the people what they wanted in terms of the creativity?
Yeah, I think the offense did look better than they have looked in the past, but specifically in terms of them getting off to a good start. Jermaine Burton seems to be coming alive over the last couple of weeks, making some plays, finally making a consistent impact on Alabama's offense. I think that was huge. Jason McClellan continues to run hard, continues to fight for extra yards. It seems like the first person, will not take him down every time he runs the football. Jameer Gibbs is a guy who I have talked about being more impressive and more effective in space bet going back to that Auburn game. Seemed to take a page from Jason McClellan's book and become more of a tough runner. So I think the offense showed some improvements, showed some signs of some of the stuff we saw early in the season as well, but they did look better. But just going back to that college football playoff discussion as well, I know it's kind of a big thing everybody wants to discuss at the moment. I thought going into this upcoming weekend with the Crimson Tide, in terms of them possibly making the college football playoff, I felt a lot had to happen. I felt in a lot of these situations, and when discussions come up in terms of the college football playoff committee, the Crimson Tide can't be compared to another team where you have to pick hairs, go through all of the smaller things. I think Alabama will lose most of those conversations and discussions. So I just feel a lot of teams needed to lose for the Crimson Tide to be in the best position to possibly make the college football playoff. I know a lot of people are looking at the teams above Alabama, looking at the Ohio State, the game, looking at Georgia, looking at just the teams that were ranked above Alabama, LSU, of course. But my eyes in particular was on the teams behind Alabama, because if Clemson won out, how can Alabama get in over a ACC champion with one loss? If Oregon wins out, how can Alabama possibly get in over a Pac-12 champion who has 2 losses? So those games where my eyes were on. I think with those 2 teams being eliminated and LSU being eliminated most likely as well, I felt that paved the way for the Crimson Tide to possibly get their way in. And Ohio State losing the way that they did sort of was like the icing on the cake to say, like, yo, like Pat said, it really is a discussion to have in terms of the way that Ohio State lost and the way that Alabama lost, basically by 4 points on 2 different plays, and Ohio State losing at home in their biggest game of the season. So there's a lot to be discussed, of course, with the College Football Playoff Committee. You can't really predict too much because it is people. You never know how people are going to think. But if Alabama wants to have a legitimate chance on making it, I think they have to be number 5. I think they have to be number 5. I think they can't be if they're number 6, a lot more chaos has to happen. But if they're number 5, a little bit less chaos has to happen.
Yeah, I think that also what probably didn't help was USC beating Notre Dame yesterday. That probably would have helped a whole heck of a lot more. But there's going into this weekend, there were so many dominoes that had to fall for Alabama to even get back into the discussion. And the fact that that we're even having it at this point is kind of a testament to just the chaos that's kind of happened. And I'm kind of curious to see what Steven thinks about this whole situation. Do you think Alabama could creep in at number 5 this week?
I mean, there's definitely a there, and then going back to what Justin was mentioning about, the teams behind and the teams in front of Alabama, but more importantly, what does the committee think? Because it's people. Remember, in the BCS era, it was computers, and people got so sick and tired of the computers. We need a human eye. We need, human interest on this thing. And now that we've gotten human interest with the college football playoff, having these same discussions amongst ourselves and amongst this committee that meets every week down there in Texas. So I would have loved to have seen Notre Dame take care of SC, because like Pat mentioned, that would have been huge. But once again, you still have conference championship week. So does SC lose the Pac-12 championship game? It very well could. And that could push Alabama in there. But it depends on where will the Crimson Tide be ranked as of Tuesday when the latest rankings come out from the CFP. But an interesting thought here, Pat, and this comes from Jalal. He is writing in from the Auburn game. He is saying, how come Alabama hasn't been using 45, being Robbie Oots, more? He blocks better than anybody on the team. And Robbie Oots not only is blocking better, this man is catching the football. And he has come on as a tight end. In the Iron Bowl, Robbie Oots made a couple of really nice catches, and he's got some quickness. He's put a couple of moves on guys, made a couple of people miss, getting up and down the field. And Saban talked about how much he has grown at that tight end position. He plays more H-back than tight end. Kind of reminds you of Brad Smelly from some years ago when he played that position as well. But, I mean, Pat, how impressed have you been with Robbie Oots, not just as a blocker, but growing into that complete tight end role, catching the ball also?
Well, I think it was pretty impressive, especially yesterday. I know he was kind of left open on the sidelines a bit, but he was able to make some plays when he got the football. And I think part of the reason why he wasn't getting on the field right away, because he wasn't that complete tight end. It's a little bit of the inverse of what we've kind of been discussing of like recruiting tight ends, where so a lot of them are more like receivers when they come in, but Robbie Oots was more of a blocker than anything else. So he really kind of had to develop as a pass catcher. And I think he started to do that, and he's worked his way onto the field, and Alabama's having more success. I think it's also important for Alabama's run game, because I think Justin mentioned it earlier. I think I liked what I saw a lot more in terms of the balance of the running backs. It wasn't necessarily just heavy Gibbs or heavy McClellan like weeks past. They really had a nice split and a balance in the run game between the two of them. And they're really able to block the edges a bit better than they've been used to. And I think that it's just a testament to Oots for just working his butt off and just becoming that complete player.
Yeah, speaking of Robbie Oots, just to jump in right here, basically be jamming, basically say what I was about to say. Yeah, he is built like a fullback, H-back, like you said, Steven, and you hit the nail on the head too, Pat. He is a guy who was a blocker coming out of high school. I haven't seen his highlight films are blocks. Like, they're not touchdowns, they're not catches. He literally is making like crazy nasty blocks. That was his highlight film for his like junior and senior season out of South Carolina. But looking at what Robbie Oots brings to the table, he is a great blocker, has consistently been a good blocker. Going back to last season, he was at fullback a lot of times, blocking for B-Rob heading into the end zone. So Crimson Tide have always known he was a great blocker, but they wanted to turn him into that full tight end. And just looking at his skill set and look at the way he plays, I don't think he'll ever be a great route runner, which is what I kind of said him coming to Tuscaloosa, like he needs to develop as a route runner, be a better complete tight end. But looking at the way that he has developed, he has sort of turned into a unique player, and basically given Alabama an opportunity to have an H-back. I don't think they were recruiting him really to be an H-back who's being recruited as like a traditional tight end. And I think the biggest thing about him, I think one of his strengths now is him being in space, because no one wants to tackle that guy in space, no matter how big and bad you are. No one wants to be one-on-one on the island with that guy with that size who can move and in space like that. And that's why you saw a lot of guys making some nice tackles on him, making sure that they go low. You didn't see anybody going high on him, because he's going to break tackle. Going to be a guy who's going to make any moves. I think he's going to look to run over guys in the future. So I think he can be a nice weapon for the Crimson Tide.
Well, people as always, you know what to do. You check out the Big Game College Football Podcast Network and audio stream for the best college football coverage in the South. We want you to check us out here, the Bama Elite Touchdown Alabama Magazine, right here on YouTube. Give us a like on the show. Hit that like button. Raise those likes up right there. We appreciate the support coming from you guys. If you can't catch us here, you get to the Big Game College Football Podcast Network and audio stream. Also, check out Prize Picks. Our sponsors, they do an incredible job. Fantasy sports, nothing like it. If you crave Alabama football, you use the code BAMA100. Once again, that's BAMA100. You against the projections, which means if you put in a $50 to $100 deposit, you can get that matched right back to you. A fun way to get a part there of fantasy sports, Prize Picks. Check those guys out right there. But flipping this over to Alabama's defense, DJ Dale got a fumble recovery in the game. Will Anderson had 2 sacks in the matchup. Dallas Turner had a couple of quarterback hurries, but Pat, Coach Saban mentioned it. Auburn had these run plays where he said it looked like single wing and Pop Warner football and very hard to defend. And Robbie Ashford had some big runs out there from the quarterback perspective. But Auburn came out with all the stops in the run game. And there were moments where it was those runs, Pat, that just seemed to keep Auburn alive, even though Alabama's offense did, look better, the best it's looked all season. What was the issue in your mind with Alabama just not being able to set that edge on defense on those runs?
Well, there was some poor tackling and a lot of over pursuing is what I saw too, especially on some of these stretch plays where I think a couple of times there was some defensive linemen that worked way too far upfield or kind of just cheated it and didn't hold that edge. That's what really allowed Auburn to get around the corners. And also they kind of just, they played 8 offensive linemen, 6. They had a bunch of blockers in the game, so they were able to just kind of block Alabama. But at the same time, it doesn't. And even if they have a bunch of blockers in the field, giving them 300 yards isn't a great look. And even though Auburn's going to run it pretty much every other play, and Robbie Ashford he's a fantastic athlete. And also, I think it was I was just kind of waiting until I'm not necessarily an expert on the defensive schematics, but I was kind of waiting there for a minute, especially on some of these third downs. I'm like, wait, when are they going to put a spy on this guy? Because I think there was one play, it was like 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, where he just ran right up the middle for like 25 yards and just kept their drive alive. So, yeah, so I think there are some concerns, especially with the tackling and kind of just the over pursuing part of it. But I don't think Alabama is going to go up against a team that has an offense similar to Auburn's because, like Nick Saban said, it's a difficult offense to kind of defend, especially when they're running a lot of plays where this defense has no experience going up against from week to week. So, I think if Alabama plays against a more traditional passing offense, they'll probably fare a little bit better, even though that they still have some things to clean up.
Dolomite with an interesting comment he wrote in. Cadillac Williams brought out some plays from 2004. So Cadillac Williams playing for Auburn from 2001 to 04. Cadillac Williams, a 2-time 1,000-yard rusher when he was at Auburn as a running back. But when you look at this, guys, kind of interesting how Will Anderson and Bryce Young came out the field following the Iron Bowl. Bryce Young, a 3-touchdown performance, 4 if you count the rushing touchdown. He comes off the field, waving to the crowd, really pumping his fist, waving to the crowd, showing admiration to the fans. And the idea is this his final game? And Bryant-Denny as an Alabama quarterback, it sure looked to be that way. And of course, Will Anderson, he comes off the field, hugging, coming behind Nick Saban, giving him a hug there. And, Bama Nation wondering, okay, is this the last time we see both of these two guys in an Alabama jersey there on the field? And I think so, just seeing how both of these two are going to be top 5 picks. Both of these two are going to be high first-round picks. Will Anderson could be the number 1 overall pick. Bryce Young could be the number 1 overall pick. So starting off, with you, John, if this is the final game for both of these two, which it very well will be, how do you remember Bryce and Will inside Bryant-Denny?
Yeah, I think as far as on Will Anderson, I think he's one of the best defensive players in the Nick Saban era. One of the best defensive players to ever play for Alabama, and I think just to be considered one of those is a great accomplishment for any guy. I think you have he's he's going to be one of the first guys off the NFL draft board in the 2023 NFL draft, and I'm going to remember him as a guy I think who just came in and basically made an impact. I think he's a guy who, as a freshman, came in, started right away, didn't have to wait for his opportunity, basically made his way on the field as soon as he got an opportunity. As far as Bryce Young, I think the memorable moments down the stretch in games when all of the pressure is on him, puts a smile on his face and goes out and delivers Alabama a win. I think those are some memorable moments for not only Alabama fans, but college football fans as a whole. Of course, he's a Heisman Trophy winner, which means he's going to be probably remembered for a very, very long time in college football. So, yeah, those are the two most memorable things I remember about those guys. If it is indeed their last time playing for the Crimson Tide in Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I would pretty much say that it's borderline a lock that it was, because both of those guys are projected to go in the top 5, and you'd be kind of foolish to turn down those sorts of opportunities and that kind of money. But anyway, speaking to like the legacy those guys left, I think when you just talk about the best players that Nick Saban or Alabama, the university has had in general, those guys are now creeping toward the top of that list, in my opinion, at least, and that's really saying something from all the talented players that have come through this program. Not just in the Nick Saban era, but the years past. I mean, we talk about guys like Derek Thomas, Sean Alexander, and all those sorts of crews. So I think, Bryce Young probably, in my opinion, is the best quarterback that the school has ever had. I mean, that just because, even though A.J. McCarron could have necessarily the championship pedigree and the resume, or Tua Tagovailoa, the passing, it's just kind of just watching him play from game to game. And like we've talked about all year, Alabama's offense, how many times was it just where Bryce Young has kind of had to drag it and figure things out, even dating back to last year where, the odds were so much not so put against him that he just kind of figured out a way to make it work and win games and carry them to a national championship. So I think he'll be remembered and highly as probably probably the best quarterback that Alabama's had. And Will Anderson, I think he's up there too in terms of defenders.
Absolutely. I look at it like this. Two things that I'll always remember about both of these two young men is just how not only how they approach the game, but how Will Anderson and Bryce Young approach the media. I mean, with such grace, both of these two. I mean, when it comes down to speaking to reporters, how open and inviting Bryce Young is and talking with us in the media, and how open and inviting Will Anderson is as well. And I remember going back to last year, there was a time where Anderson walked into the media room and showed emotion about how the defense wasn't playing to where he wanted them to play at. And then I think it was at that moment where a turning point came. Bryce Young has come into the media room and he has flashed a smile on his face and has just given us the best of his time and the best moments that he has had just sitting right there in front of us. So not only what they've done on the field, I will be remembering them by, but how they handled us as reporters with such class, such grace, and being able to want to talk to us and want to share that time with us, their football journey and career. But guys, a funny moment that happened in the game came from the kicker, Will Reichard. I mean, Reichard made a tackle in the Iron Bowl, like a touchdown-saving tackle, and then Reichard stands over the guy and tries to flip over the Auburn player while the guy is on the ground. So Will Reichard showing he got a little gangster in him on Will Reichard out there as the kicker. So not only doing his expertise on special teams, but Reichard Packard can run you down and make a tackle on you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember him ever making a tackle. So, I mean, if that's going to be the only one he has at Alabama, I mean, I guess he's got to celebrate it as they come.
Just your thoughts on Will Reichard right there.
Yeah, Riker. Yeah, that was a good moment for him. I think that just really brought to the forefront the energy Alabama played with on Saturday. I think that's something I don't think we talked about here a lot today, but Alabama played with a lot of energy for the Iron Bowl. Seemed a lot of energy on the sideline, especially after that moment. I think that moment gave the whole team some So yeah, that was a great moment for Will Reichard, who is an Alabama native. I'm pretty sure that game meant a lot to him.
We got some thoughts here, guys, coming from one fan, William Bankston, who writes in, what bowl game or what bowling opponent would you guys like to see? So what bowling opponent would we like to see in terms of Alabama? There are different projections out here. Of course, I've talked about this. I know ESPN has Alabama in the Orange Bowl, possibly playing Clemson in that. I know Jerry Palm, who's with CBS Sports, he's got Alabama projected for the Sugar Bowl. I don't know who the opponent is for that matchup, but Jerry Palm's got Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. But, I mean, we will see on Tuesday in terms of when the latest college football playoff rankings come out, where will Alabama stand? Where would they stay? Okay, Gelato writes in Alabama would play Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. So that would be the team that Bama would play if it is to go to the Sugar Bowl. That would be Kansas State, which that would be an interesting matchup. Bama against K-State, that would be kind of fun right there. It would be kind of fun. The Bama Center writing in, my man and the crew over there at the Bama Standard, that he writes in, we're more likely headed to the Orange Bowl where we would draw Clemson or North Carolina. North Carolina could be really fun. That could be really fun, going down to the Orange Bowl in Miami to take on North Carolina, or the Sugar Bowl where you would take on K-State. But we will see how the College Football Playoff Committee looks at this and goes about its deliberation when the rankings come out here on Tuesday. But Pat, you and I were also in the press conference where Coach Saban had a butt on his face right there. And Saban mentioned how they don't make them like they used to. Everybody else would be in the transfer portal. Coach Saban, nah, right there on the field, coaching up everybody. I think one of his own players ran into him. And so Coach Saban said, you think I'm cut up? Look at the other guy. Look at him. See how he's doing over there. So Coach, even at 71 years old, saying he could take a punch, a hit, anything, will still get up like he's Mel Gibson from Braveheart with the whole blood there coming down his face there, Pat.
Yeah, I'm not really sure which player it was, but if it was an Alabama player or what, who ran into Nick. But if it was, I have to imagine that there may be some extra sprints this week for cutting up Coach's face.
Yeah, there may be extra sprints this week, but I'm pretty sure Coach got a kick out of that. On the sideline, the camera panned to him, cut on the face, but. Saban's still saying, hey, I'm Rocky Balboa out here. I can still do this even at 71 years of age there. But I know, Justin, you saw the moment. What'd you think of Coach Saban walking into the press conference, full scar on the face, but saying, hey, forget the medical tent. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to come in the press conference with the full scar on my face here.
Yeah. Saban definitely showing off some toughness. And I wonder what happened in the moment, because those are pretty bad scars. I was like, yo, what? Because the explanation was that shoulder pads scraped his face. I'm like, what type of shoulder pads were those that scraped his face for him to get injured like that? So I want to see the moment, to be honest. I want to go, did the guy run into him? It looked like a helmet hit or something, because it was pretty bad. I thought, I just wonder what happened. But Saban took it. Saban took it like he was a tough guy.
Of course, we got God SEC, which is our own Waylon, writes in. He believes Pete Golding and Coach Saban had a slugfest. So did Pete Golding and Nick Saban have a little knuckle up there? I said Pete Saban, my bad. Did Pete Golding and Nick Saban have a little knuckle up there? We will see. I mean, that's interesting there. B Jammin writes in. He's saying how man can take a Gatorade jug to the head, then he can take anything. So B. Jim referring back to Coach Saban from the national championships, where Saban took a Gatorade jug to the head and was still doing his thing. So maybe he can take some shoulder pads, hit him across the face. Saban keeps saying they don't make them like they used to. So it's built for tough. That's Nick Saban there. If I can use a line there from the Ford truck commercials there one time. But 49-27. Alabama getting the win over Auburn in the Iron Bowl. The streak of 10-win seasons continues with the Crimson Tide. 15 straight 10-win seasons for Alabama to cap off this 2022 campaign. The hope for Saban, if he is to lobby and campaign for the team to get to the college football playoff, he will try to do that. Bryce Young and Will Anderson, both in the presser after the game, making their pitches to the media that want to see their Alabama get in. What would that pitch be? So a lot of that going on. There's an interesting thought here. Pale Baby TV, who writes in, who do y'all see returning in terms of the Crimson Tide coming back? Me personally, I would like to see Tyler Harrell come back. I know they announced him as a senior, but he's got the Louisville tape, but not the Alabama tape for the NFL. With him being healthy now, I would like to see Ty Harrell back. I know there's the rumblings of does Will Reichard use his COVID-19 waiver to come back for a 5th season? He absolutely could, especially with Jack Martin in the transfer portal. So, I would like Harrell back. I would like to Will Reichard back. Who else would I like to see back? I think Malachi Moore has to come back because he hasn't had the year that he needs to have. I know Gelato was writing in Brian Branch to come back. That's kind of a tricky one there. Branch could go. I think Branch could absolutely go. Pat, you're shaking your head there. Do you see Branch going?
No,
or do you see Branch coming back?
I think he's leaving. I think he's had probably one of his better years. I know you can point at he's missed a couple of tackles the past few weeks, but I think he's probably had a pretty strong year. I think he's probably poised to get on his way out.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I was just jump. I think Gelato was saying Branch need to leave though, but you can keep on going, Pat.
Oh yeah, I see it now. Yeah, no, yeah. So yeah, we agree, Gelato, that he's probably gonna be heading out. So, but in terms of the receivers, I think every receiver's got to come back. I haven't seen enough of many of them to make me feel like that they're going to be valuable draft picks in this year's draft.
I agree with you on that, Pat. I think Brian Branch is gone. I think Justin Aboigbe should come back. I know he had the neck procedure there. He needs a 5th year. I think he needs to come back. Now, as far as the receivers, they all should, because none of those guys have separated themselves. None of those guys have had the year worthy of being a pro draft pick. I think Burton should come back. I think Trayshawn Holden should come back. Now, could some of these guys hit the transfer portal? That is an option. That's definitely an option. But we will see. Really 3-5-1 in. Branch would be a fool to leave. He's a 3rd rounder at best this year, 1st round lock next year. So that's Willie 3-5-1 campaigning for Brian Branch to come back. Now, if he does come back, Brian Branch, to me, if Brian Branch does come back, if he makes this move, because you're losing both DeMarco Hellams and Jordan Ballard to the draft. Brian Branch, Justin, if he comes back, free safety or strong safety? What's better for Brian Branch?
No, I think he'll be a good safety, but I've seen Branch be projected to be a 1st-round draft pick on draft boards. I think he's gonna have to dig into some things and figure it out to see where exactly he is, but he's been projected to be like a 1st-round draft pick on draft boards according to draft experts. Of course, I think he can show some more and be legitimately a 1st-round draft pick. I think if he goes to the draft this time, I think he literally has to show out at the combine and get some steam behind him, make that push to be a legitimate 1st-round pick. But he's been high on draft boards, so he's going to be a guy thinking that at least going to test the water, be informed about his decision, and we'll see what happens. But I think if he comes back, I think like Willie 351 said, I do feel like he can like legitimize himself and just make himself undoubtedly a 1st-round pick if he comes back. But he's been projected to be among those boards, so we'll see what happens if that changes or if he's going to test the waters or what advice he gets from Nick Saban. But I think him coming back and being in Hellams or battle spot, I think he'll be able to show a little bit more of what he's able to do. But I think he is a guy that has shown a lot of potential.
Yeah, no, I
like his blitzing ability.
Go ahead, Steven.
Okay, I like the blitzing ability he has. I like Branch's blitzing ability. I like his ability to come downhill, make tackles in the run game. I like his ability to close on receivers. My thing with Branch is in coverage against speed guys, that's the issue with him. In coverage against speed guys and not being able to reroute those guys and hang with those guys, that's the issue there with Branch. And he gets called for a pass interference or two, per game. So if he to come back and clean that area of his game would make him a first round pick, is be able to hang with these fast receivers, hang with these speed guys in terms of on the perimeter. But we're starting to get some thoughts here. Guys, of the quarterback situation for next season. I've guys throwing questions in here about Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe. Now, with the bowl game coming up, you got about 14 bowl practices here when you look at getting guys ready, getting guys acclimated, getting guys set, and those reps that are highly important. We go back to remember the Citrus Bowl in the 2019 season. Mac Jones got all of those reps preparing for Michigan, and we saw how that really helped him. 2020 season got him playing as a starting quarterback. Mac Jones that season, 4,500 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, Heisman Trophy finalist, and got Alabama to the national championship. But Pat, when you look at Bryce Young, Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, Jalen Milroe, how do you see this kind of both guys would have the opportunity to use that bowl prep to get better and trying to compete for the starting job in the spring of next year, but in the fall of next season?
Well, I mean, obviously more practice is going to help, but I don't know how much time they're really going to get. It's all going to probably depend on whether Bryce Young decides to play in the bowl game or not. Because if Bryce Young wants to finish out and play in the bowl game, then he's getting all the reps. There's no question about that. So I feel it's good. The quarterback situation is going to be much more of an emphasis in the spring, in my opinion. And I think, I see a lot of people in the chat saying that Milroe definitely needs some work. And I agree. I think he needs to improve even more as a passer. And then we need to see Ty Simpson actually show some flashes as well in his own right when he gets extended work himself and when they're actually competing. So I think all this kind of hinges on whether Bryce Young actually decides to play and finish out, or, look, if Alabama sneaks in the college football playoff, then Bryce Young is going to be he's going to be playing anyway. So either way, it kind of just depends on the situation.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that quarterback situation. Like I said, I kind of agree with you, Pat. It all depends on if Bryce will he sit out if Alabama's in for a bowl game, or what his decision will be. I think that puts forth the conversation of will it be Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson. In my opinion, I think it'll be Jalen Milroe if Bryce Young decides to sit out for a bowl game. Yeah, similar to what everybody's saying in the chat too. Jalen Milroe has to work on his pass mechanics for sure. He has to get better. He has to be more consistent. I think that's the biggest thing, because we just see flashes. Like we see like a good throw here, then he throws it a horrible pass, make a horrible decision. So he just has to definitely be a more consistent passer. But like when I always talk about him, if he ever gets it together to be a better passer, he's going to be a great player to watch. A person going to make a lot of great plays. But Ty Simpson is going to be on his heels, I feel, moving forward. Ty Simpson is a guy who is more quick than fast, not a guy who's going to leave you with his speed, but he seems to know when to run the football. He can move around the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, can make some nice throws. Was consistent at the high school football level. So we'll see what happens with that quarterback competition. But I do feel that Jalen Milroe is a guy who will definitely have to continue to grow as a quarterback. And I think he will need, I know he will make some strides most likely this offseason, but I don't know if there will be huge strides. And if he does come back and he is considered Alabama's starting quarterback, I do feel that Alabama's offensive coordinator, whoever it will be, will need to tailor the offense towards his strengths. I think that's something that I think Bill O'Brien has failed to do when Milroe did get the start, but I think it is possible. Just tailor a little bit more to what he can do. Quarterback runs, some easier passes. I think that could work. But yeah, I think Ty Simpson is going to be on his heels throughout this quarterback competition.
Well, guys, as we're wrapping this up here on the recap for the Bama Elite, Justin actually brought this into the forefront now. So whoever the quarterback, whoever the offensive coordinator is for next season is going to play a huge role, and will it be Ty Simpson or Jalen Milroe? Let's say, for instance, if Bill O'Brien is not back after this season, you look at Dan Mullen's name has been thrown out there. You look at Garrett Riley from TCU. His name has been thrown out there. If he doesn't get a head coach job elsewhere, there's been quite a few names thrown out there into the pot. Joe Brady's name's been thrown in there, even though he's still with Buffalo and with Josh Allen at quarterback. But there's been different names put into the pot here in terms of offensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide. So I will say this, Pat. Depending on who's the OC, if there was a name, Pat, that you would love to have at Alabama running this offense, who would that name be?
Bill O'Brien. I mean, I'm probably Dan Mullen. That's just kind of off the top of my head. But look, I mean, Bill O'Brien's not gone yet. He could still very well be coming back. He may have saved his job this past week in the Iron Bowl when he's just showing all this creativity and the success passing the ball down the field. So, I mean, it's kind of tough to talk about like it's a done deal, but obviously getting a former head coach in Dan Mullen would be great to have on the staff. So, I mean, either way, I think the work's going to be cut out for them on the offensive side of the football, especially when you're transitioning quarterbacks to somebody who's just, if it is Jalen Milroe, someone who's just strikingly different in his style of play than Bryce Young. So it's going to take a lot of work and kind of tinkering with, the offense in general, whoever it is who's calling plays next year.
All right, so Justin, that leaves you here for the question.
Yeah,
Who would your offensive coordinator be?
Yeah, I don't have any right off the top of my head. I think there's still some things that have to be figured out. So yeah, I wouldn't have a guy off the top of my head for sure. I know Dan Mullen is a guy who I've thought about just based on what he has done as an offensive mind and with the quarterbacks that he has helped develop. And looking at a guy like Jalen Milroe, I think he has had quarterbacks in the past who have been able to move around. So yeah, I think he's a name to put in the mix. And like Nick Saban always says, he has a list of names that he will pull from. He seems to be prepared for those turnovers. Fortunately, but probably unfortunately for him, he hasn't been forced to pull from that list. So we'll see what happens with Bill O'Brien. I am interested in seeing where he goes. I know he's in the mix to be possibly a head coach at a college, possibly move on to the NFL. So we'll see what happens at that offensive coordinator position for the Crimson Tide.
Just real quick,
we do know is go ahead.
Just want to go on record real quick, Steven. I don't think Bill O'Brien should be coming back next year. just so we're clear, I think a transition from somebody else will. I
mean, because Pat, people kind of hot on you right there, but we definitely will see how this all kind of sort of plays out. Now, Bill O'Brien is. Bill O'Brien is now the top candidate for the Georgia Tech job. And right now, I know Jay Babb, who is the athletics director for the Yellow Jackets, former deputy director at the University of Alabama, has looked at Bill O'Brien as the number one guy at this point. We will see if that comes to fruition there at Georgia Tech. We've also been hearing that the NFL, that door could be still left open there for O'Brien to go back to coach pro ball. But this offseason is going to be an interesting offseason because you look at, who's going to be the OC. Does Coach say Golden about to keep Pete Golden at D? Golden go elsewhere. You have to look at the number of players you're losing to the NFL and the young guys coming behind them. Are they ready? Are they set? Are they proven? But folks, Alabama got the win over Auburn, 10th victory of the season. They're getting ready to see the bowl game when they get in Tuesday night. New college football playoff rankings. Going to be interesting to dive into those. Where does Alabama stand where that is concerned? You've been checking out the Bama Elite Touchdown Alabama magazine right here on YouTube. Continue hitting that like button. Give us a thumbs up right here. Raise those like levels up, giving you what you crave, talking Crimson Tide football. But for all of us here at TDA, for Justin Smith, my man Patrick Dowd, I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith. This has been the recap here on a Sunday. Till next time, folks, it's been the BAMA Elite.